Hey guys, as part of my A to Z Beginner's Guide series, I like to go through and talk about particular heroes as well as a very short guide on where they fit in the current meta as well as what I would recommend practicing on them before you enter a variety of games on them. To start off, this episode is about Alarak. Alarak is a burst mage who can quickly pick a target who's out of position, and he can also take a lot of targets that are grouped together and turn it into a winning fight. He has huge momentum when ahead in games, but can struggle when he gets a little bit behind because of his passive mechanic. He has a very large map pool. He fits on just about any map that you might need. It works in very specific compositions, but he works best on maps that require a lot of rotations or maps that have a lot of clustered areas. His meta builds currently have two different builds. One is very common in Hero League, which is the Ruthless Momentum or Q build. It's based around getting a lot of combos that pull people in and silence a large amount of enemy heroes, as well as dealing with a large amount of burst damage. His secondary build is often called the Lightning build. The whole point of the Lightning build is to use it for self-sustain, to poke enemies down, as well as at level 16 to get a little bit of burst as you can double lightning people. So let's get into the game, and I want to show you some few things that I would highly recommend you practice on Alarak before getting into any serious games. The first thing I recommend is going into the try mode and set a level at a reasonable point, something that you might be dealing some damage to enemies, and then I recommend going down to these dummies and practicing a couple combos. One of the first things that I always like practicing is using E on the structure to hit all the enemy heroes in the area. For example, a structure there. The reason why is because your E does more damage to the enemies that are within the E rather than the ones that you're directly hitting. So it's much more effective to try to do that, and it makes it to where you can hit more targets, especially if you're trying to complete a quest. For instance, the level 1 quest, it says hit heroes in the center of it, and you start increasing the range, the damage, and applying a slow. Same deal with this. Hitting structures with your E makes it a lot easier than trying to hit it with anything else. Don't forget, you can also reposition so you're hitting minions and stuff with it as well. But the next thing that I really want you to practice is kind of Alarak's bread and butter, which is his W talent that pushes or pulls enemies around. And we're going to toggle cooldowns so we can do this a little bit more effectively. And you can essentially push people in, push people out. You can move yourself with it in any direction. But the bread and butter of his combo is effectively to push in allies or enemies and then do damage to all of them at the same time. It becomes a lot of damage, and it's definitely his bread and butter, the one thing that he uses the most. I find it easiest when you get to level 7 and you get the thing that increases its push distance. So let's go into the basic Q build, the one that you'll be seeing the most in Hero League, and let's talk about a little bit how this works. So you take him here and you bring him in, and then you use your Q to hit as many targets as possible. If you hit 3 heroes in a row, you'll complete your quest. In this case, we only hit 2, so you're going to want to try to practice landing these to hit all 3 of them so you get your quests completed as early as possible. Also get used to doing other things in the same sense of maybe sending something down and then using your Q in case the enemies are running away in a different direction than you're not expecting. By practicing a lot of different ways of utilizing your Qs and your Ws, you're going to start getting really good at his bread and butter combo, and when you get into a situation where you see an enemy who's trying to run away, you can kind of start up, get some damage off, and then you can bring them back into you and get a large amount of burst. So that's essentially what Alarak is all about, is getting these quick bursts in and then bringing up his sadism to the point where he starts doing more than 100% of his damage, as this can seriously stack up really, really fast. So we can get to the point on this easily 120%, and once you get to your level 13 talent where you can start going above that 120% and get well into the 150%, which makes him one of the scariest champions if you get ahead in a game. Well, even if he's a little bit behind, he can still be pretty scary. In this case, the 93%, you can still pull people in and still do a lot of combos, but as you saw, it is pretty easy to miss them. So I'd highly recommend practicing those combos as well as landing your E's on the middle of your target, or the hitting your targets in the middle of your E. If you can start doing that, then you will be improving very quickly on Alarak, and I highly recommend all of that before you start getting into playing him. But overall, he's a very fun hero to play. He's a little bit of feast to famine. If you win, he's really strong. If you start losing, he gets pretty weak. But he fits on a lot of maps and a lot of compositions, so I highly recommend everyone try him out. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to check out all of my other videos.